He called me on Easter Sunday, 2019, and I erroneously thought he was calling me to wish me a happy Easter, Steph. He was not calling me to wish me a happy Easter. And a White House operator, hold for the president. Oh, okay. Mr. President, Anthony, what the hell is wrong with you? I just read this op-ed. This is absolutely ridiculous. The press are the enemy of the people. Are you with me or not? Are you with me or not? Aren't you a MAGA guy? Okay, Mr. President, I respectfully disagree with you. I don't have time to hear your disagreement. Click. That was the last time I talked to President Trump.
The Mooch is here with us. So you are obviously backing Kamala Harris. You are out campaigning with her this weekend, aren't you, in Pennsylvania? Do you think she's going to win?
Well, listen, I think we all have to be objective. It's a very close election. The short answer is yes, I think she's going to win. And since this is a money podcast, let's just go to data analytics. She is in a very good position from organization and money. So she's got 300,000 volunteers in those 7 swing states versus 50,000 for Donald Trump. She's raised him 3-1 now, if you look at what she has left in her checking account. And she's very well organized. And I will point out that early polling in Georgia and Pennsylvania favor her. And she's done a very good job in getting new registrations through the door of the Democrats. So for those reasons, I think she's going to win. But listen, it's a tough situation. What we're going to have to ask ourselves, we're going to have a reckoning at some point in our society. Donald Trump is telling people that he wants to use the American military to go after his political adversaries. This is the rest of his money. He's talking about ending the independence of the Federal Reserve, and we know how well that worked out for the Bank of Turkey, don't we? And he's talking about tariffs. He said very simplistically, we could roll a tape somewhere at some point, 100, 200, 500. I'm not really sure. It's just my gut reaction. It's a moving target and how high the tariffs will be once I'm elected. So all of these things are horrifically damaging. And just let me make one last point. He talks about non-white immigrants to the United States the way the National Socialists talked about Jews in the 1930s. So this is absolutely reprehensible. And Trump is running on 4 pillars. He's running on cruelty, misogyny, anti-immigration, and racism. And so if he gets elected, it's going to be a very tough stretch of time for the United States and, frankly, the world. And since this is a money podcast, yes, some people will say, well, he's got some good policies business-wise. But let me tell you something. If he pulls us out of NATO and he starts to create an isolationist-oriented America, that will be very, very bad for the macro economy and the macro markets.
I mean, let's come back to money in a minute or two. But you've described accurately the misogynist things he said. You've described the phrases he used that many people would say are straightforwardly racist. I love America. I've spent my whole life admiring so much of what America has both done and stands for. Why do so many Americans nonetheless want to vote for him despite these appalling values?
Well, listen, I love America too, and I'm the product of America, right? I'm from a family of immigrants, Italian-American immigrants, and I'm from a family of peasant farmers, masons, and my dad was a crane operator, hourly workers. And so to have the opportunity that I've had in America to go to fine schools, a great investment bank, build 2 successful businesses, it's really an aspirational element of the American dream, which I love and have this very strong feeling for my country, which is why I'm speaking out against Donald Trump. But unfortunately, in America, we have had from the beginning the original stain of slavery in the constitutional documents. We had a very violent civil war. 600,000 Americans died. We've had 160 years of trying to reconcile the race relations in the United States. And we have large elements of isolationism and what we would call American nativism. I got here before you did. Of course, nobody got there before the Native Americans. They seem to be indigenous to the place, but I got there before you did. And so therefore you're an outsider. I'm an insider. And like they said to my grandmother in the 1920s, the acronym was NINA, N-I-N-A, no Italians need apply. And so my grandmother couldn't go into a store or to a shop. She ended up being a housemaid upon her arrival in 1923. So we've had
this racism has always been there.
It's always been there. But here's the thing that you guys need to know, and I want you to really consider this. I want your viewers and listeners to consider this. We have no historical or hereditary legacy of the violence of fascism. In Great Britain, the United Kingdom, you guys go to school tours. You may go to the Churchill War Rooms, or you may go to a bombed out area of London or part of Great Britain to remind people of the scourge of Nazism. If you're in France, you go to Normandy. If you're in Poland, you go to Auschwitz. In the United States, we had a Nazi movement. We had an America First movement in the late 1930s. The aviator Charles Lindbergh was a big leader of that movement. There was a Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden in the 1930s. But Franklin Roosevelt was a very successful politician, and he banded together with others that had strength and courage, and they put down that movement. We have jellyfish for politicians in the United States, in the Republican Party. So this guy, Kevin McCarthy, is a coward and a jellyfish. He could have put Trump lights out on the 7th of January, 2021. They could have impeached him and convicted him, and then he could no longer stand for election. But he's a jellyfish. And this is an indictment of people in my former party, the Republican Party. They will put their personal power and their personal needs and their self-aggrandizement ahead of serving the American public.
But just on serving the American public, and let's get back, therefore, to the economy. Donald Trump, only a few hours ago, goes on Bloomberg television and says he will put pressure on the Federal Reserve to set interest rates in the way that he wants, right? Now, all recent history suggests that when politicians put pressure on central banks, it ends up in tears. Why do sensible business people back Trump if they see him saying, I'm going to create chronic monetary instability?
So, Alistair Campbell and I talk about this a lot, that people don't take seriously what Trump is saying. Okay, when Adolf Hitler was talking about rounding up Jews, and Adolf Hitler was talking about the demolition of the institutions of the state of Germany and making himself the state, which is what these fascists do, people really didn't take him seriously. There were the German Jews lived in Germany successfully and quite peacefully for 500 years. When Hitler arrived on the scene, 60% of them said, okay, we have to leave Germany. 40% thought that they were Germans and they could stay, and they were massacred. So people say to me, oh, you can't compare him to Hitler or this terrible thing and blah, blah, blah. No, he has fascist tendencies. Everything he is saying are statements philosophically of fascism. That's what they are. And so if you don't want to take him seriously, that's fine. I take him seriously because I work. Are we allowed to curse on this podcast? No, probably not, right? No, but I work for the son of a bitch. So I want to say something rhetorically to you guys, and I want you to respond to it, even though it's a rhetorical question. If I worked for a pharmaceutical company, and there were 40 people that were very competent people, White House chiefs of staffs, defense secretaries, secretaries of state, chiefs of staff of sub-agencies, and there were 40 of us that got together. We were all inside the pharmaceutical company, and we saw them making a pill that was going to poison you or one of your children. And I got up on the airwaves on your podcast and said, listen, I saw that pill being made. It's going to poison your children. Don't take the pill. Are you still going to take the pill? If I was in an assembly line and I said, hey, listen, that car, the minute you get it on the highway, is going to explode, and there were 40 of us that watched it, are you getting in the car? But we have such misinformation, and we have such propaganda-induced rhetoric and adversary-inspired influence in the United States of America, where you've got a group of people saying, oh, no, Anthony's deranged. He's a never-Trumper. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm not a never-Trumper. I was once a Trumper. Can't call me a never-Trumper because I was once a Trumper. You want to say I have Trump derangement syndrome? No. I have Trump reality syndrome. Wake up. This guy, the fact that he wants to end Federal Reserve independence is enough to knock him out of the office and to disqualify him.
But if you're saying people don't think he is as bad as he is, that he won't do all these things, what are they thinking he is going to do? So why are there people who are going to vote for him? What are they thinking he will do if they don't think he's going to do all that?
They think that they have this nostalgia for his presidency because we have higher prices in America. We also have higher prices in the world. You guys are smart enough to know that that is situationally inducted. It's not personal to Harris or Biden. That was the monetary policy, the fiscal policy globally to save the economy from COVID. The aftermath of that was a disconnection of the supply chain, excess money in the markets, less goods and services, more money in the markets, you've got more inflation. That's what that was. It's coming down now. But in 17, 18, and 19, the U.S. economy was quite strong. Of course, we flipped it in 2020. Trump left office like Herbert Hoover with a net job loss. Trump left office like Herbert Hoover, where he lost the House, the Senate, and the American presidency. So he's the worst Republican candidate since Herbert Hoover, but he is a bellicose bully. And the underlying narrative is we need a strong leader. The underlying narrative is that he's going to be good for the economy because he's a apprentice-inspired reality television narrated business person, even though he's a failed business person.
But given that you make this very persuasive case that whether it's the economy, there'll be chaos. Whether it is the kind of appalling scenes we see, whether it's in Ukraine or the Middle East, there's going to be more chaos if he becomes president. Why is it that, a Peter Thiel, multi-billionaire, and Elon Musk, in some ways, the most impressive entrepreneur in the entire world, why is it that they don't only take him seriously, they back him? What the hell is going on?
So Joseph P. Kennedy was an impressive entrepreneur. He was your ambassador here. He's the U.S. representative to the United Kingdom. He was an impressive entrepreneur. He was a Nazi sympathizer.
He was.
And he was somebody that believed in dictatorship. Peter Thiel grew up in Africa. Elon Musk grew up in Africa. They are acolytes of a gentleman by the name of Curtis Yarvin. Have you heard of who he is, Curtis Yarvin?
Tell me about it.
So Curtis Yarvin is an American philosopher and a professor that believes in an American monarchy. The democracy is obsolete, and the country should be run by these very elegant, intellectual, thoughtful elites that are super wealthy. Because, if you have $1 billion, you're a genius on everything. You can land a rocket on its ass perfectly, but that makes you a genius in medicine. It makes you a genius in politics. It makes you a genius in human emotion. And so you're a genius in everything. So Yarvin, Thiel, Musk, J.D. Vance, we should clean out all the dregs of the society. They shouldn't have a voting right. They're not as smart as us. And we're going to have this sort of oligarchic run of America. Do you guys remember the movie, The Remains of the Day?
Yeah.
There's a scene in The Remains of the Day where the British elitist is looking at Anthony Hopkins and he's saying, what's your thoughts on monetary policy? And he said, I'm sorry, sir, I don't have thoughts on it. What's your thoughts on our geopolitical position in the world? I'm sorry, sir, I don't have those. And then he scuffs at him and he looks over at the other elites. He says, see, these people shouldn't have the right to vote. As they're marching in the Nazis into the estate. And it's a message. There's a message in that book that there is a wisdom in crowds. There's a message in that book that the democracy, while messy and inelegant, is what Churchill said. It is the best form of government.
And just to be clear, Elon Musk builds a supercomputer in 19 days, never been done before. He's patently, as an engineer...
Stick to the engineering.
Yep. But no. I completely agree with you, obviously. But you think that he genuinely has this toxic view that democracy is over?
So I think Musk is more well-intended than some of these other players. Okay, I think Musk is psychologically and emotionally naive to what is going on. And I think that Musk is snubbed by Biden and Harris. He voted for Biden. He gave him money. He supported them. He got snubbed in the electric vehicle summit. He got snubbed in the rocketry summit. I don't know what these people were thinking
So
about.
this is wounded pride.
By doing this, there's an element of wounded pride. But when I see Musk, I see a well-intended person who's had his pride wounded, and he's now going down the wrong path.
He's a child.
Well, he's emotionally less developed, I think. Sometimes we get, you can't put into somebody what God left out. Okay, I cannot land a rocket on its ass perfectly somewhere in Texas. I can't build a supercomputer. But God did gift me with some social awareness, and God did gift me with some levels of empathy for my fellow men and women and love for my fellow men and women in this world and in our country. And I would submit to Elon Musk, be very careful what you're wishing for. You do not want to live in a barbed-wired, security fenced-in estate in your McMansion while your fellow neighbors are suffering. Okay, the society works better when the middle and lower middle class have rising income standards and they feel aspirational about their life. They currently feel economically desperational. Trump has provided no policy solution. Yes, he's an avatar for their anger. I understand that. And they want to wreck the entire system, which has allowed America to be the greatest economic miracle in the history of the world. And so they want to wreck the system as opposed to tweaking the system and resetting the system. And this is exactly what Vladimir Putin would like them to do. And they're feeding into this bizarre narrative that our adversaries have about America. And let me just make this point, because it's a very important point. Our adversaries want the UK and the US to feel that their elections are no longer matter. They're no longer legitimate. And you should feel cynical about your society, and you should feel left out and that the society is unfair. Trump feeds that. Musk, I think, unintentionally feeds that. I think these other people are more malevolent.
So putting the kind of Musk ego things to one side, there's also the element of the wealthy wanting to get more wealthy. And Trump is saying he's going to bring down corporation tax. We've heard, Harris saying, yes, there'll be tax relief for smaller businesses, but she's going to tax the wealthier more. Isn't that part of the problem? There's a lot of greedy people out there.
Look, it's personal incentive. But again, I had a group of these were white males on Wall Street. Okay, it was a little embarrassing because, I sat with these guys yesterday. They want Trump, lower taxes. It's going to be better for my stock market portfolio. It's going to be better for this and better for that. I say, hold on a second. Is that really what you want? What is wealth? Is it the number in your bank account, or is it the comity, COMITY, in your civilization? I want to be able to walk down the street with people. I may have more money than you, but you're feeling great about your life, and you're feeling great about the opportunity for your family's future. You may have more money than me, but I'm feeling great about my life. And I think we can create that. We have very wealthy societies, the United Kingdom and the United States, and we can create that for people, but we've lost our way. And I want to just tell this historical story, if you don't mind. And I want to, it doesn't reflect well on me because I got this so wrong in my life. And I'm going to set the scene for you. It's 1993. Left-wing protesters, including Ralph Nader, are descending on the city of Seattle to protest the World Trade Organization and the introduction of the Chinese into the WTO. And the left-wingers are saying, renege NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Do not let the Chinese into the World Trade Organization. They're going to decimate our towns, our manufacturing centers. They're going to wreck our middle-class people. They're going to wreck and hollow out areas of this country and create a rust belt. Please don't let them in. I was sitting there as a 29-year-old smug Wall Streeter. The smug Wall Street narrative is that we live in David Ricardo's world where we're searching for the lowest cost provider of each thing, and we're going to allocate our capital propitiously to the lowest cost provider. And so we smugly laughed off those people. Steph, Robert, they got that right. Okay, we got that wrong. Okay, we decimated and killed these areas. And so those people are angry. They will adhere themselves to populists, whether it's Bernie Sanders, AOC, or Donald Trump on the right. It's a very similar narrative. They're just different policy responses. And the great irony is they're adhering themselves to Donald Trump, but he didn't help them in the first 4 years. Now, here's the other.
So can
weird,
I do need to pick you up on this.
Please,
okay,
please.
Right. Although the way that the establishment ignored the hollowing out of big industry in what came to be known as the Rust Belt, that was a disaster. It and this is true in Europe as much as in America. Absolutely millions of people lost good livings. They were not helped by governments to retrain, to find different jobs in these new economies, and this led directly to the rise of populism and extremism, right? So, I agree about the cause and effect. There is another side of all of this, which is the way that China exported high-quality, lower-cost goods to the West actually made our countries richer. The failure was not a failure of globalization. It was a failure of the governments to actually retrain and intervene within those economies. I don't think you can say that globalization in itself was bad. It was the way that governments reacted to globalization.
I accept the premise, but you are in a low information voting society, whether you like it or not. The people on this podcast and generally the people listening to this podcast are seeking information, and they're the high information voters. But this election and perhaps the UK elections are actually decided by the low information voters. They get home late from work. They decide they're going to go vote. They haven't really read the paper. My dad never watched the pundits on CNN, or I don't even think it existed back then, or MSNBC. He didn't do that. He watched the local news. You don't want to know why? Because he worked outside. He watched the local news. You want to see what the weather was, see how he's going to dress himself for tomorrow's work activity. And so they go to the voting booth and they have these simplistic things going on in terms of what they're going to vote for. And by the way, the number one thing you need to be the American president is name recognition. And that favors Trump because his name is fully saturated. And you're right. I accept the premise of what you're saying. But we have to synthesize 3 or 4 things. We have to synthesize a policy response, which is your issue. We have to explain it to these people. We have to make sure that these people understand that we care about them and their families. And then we have to reset the dynamic in the country, because when a person, as Steph is referencing, when a person says, well, I'm voting for Trump, it's good for my wallet, it's good for my pocket. We have to then say, excuse me, sir, it may be, but is that what you really want? Wouldn't you rather have your neighbors doing well alongside of you? Henry Ford was an anti-Semite. He was a racist, but he said something from a social engineering perspective that we should listen to. He said, you know what? I'm going to pay these people on my assembly lines enough money so they can afford the vehicles that they're producing. Oh, by the way, they're going to have a single-family house and a good public school. I don't want them descending on my Dearborn, Michigan mansion with tiki torches and pitchforks to take me out while I'm cutting my steak and eating my caviar. And we have to get back to that.
But why have we lost that? Because we had those kind of philanthropic business owners in the UK as well, building these model towns, Port Sunlight, for example. And why have we lost within the business community that sense of paternalistic responsibility?
Listen, I don't honestly know the answer to that, but we've become more atheistic. We've become more smug about our existence as science improves. We've lost our feeling for God as a group of people. Some of us haven't, but as a group of people. And the noblesse oblige that you're describing, we've become generally slightly more callous as we think of ourselves more than a greater purpose. And I'll leave you with this thought, okay? The GI Bill, and so maybe the Brits don't know exactly what that was, but in the United States, if you served in the American military in the Second World War, when you came home, if you wanted to go to college, the United States government was going to pay your tuition. This was the middle-class aspirational factory for the United States. We had Jews living in East New York. They were penniless. Their parents were tailors or knish bakers. We had Italians who were in coal mines in northeastern Pennsylvania, and we had Italians like my dad were in construction, and they became bankers or accountants or lawyers, and they went and developed a trade for themselves, and they popped their living standards, and middle-class income went incredibly high. And we have to start thinking about that again. How do we put, to your point, Robert, about job training, and how do we get people to think about their forward careers and the opportunities that they have? How do we give them that opportunity? I am not for equal outcomes. I want there to be Jeff Bezos's, Elon Musk's, and Peter Thiel's. I'm not for that. But I am for equal opportunity. We need to create a platform of equal opportunity so when people are at the starting block, they're not so far behind the other people. When the race started for me, I was way back here, and the people at Harvard that I went to school with were way up here. That was fine because it was a different time in America. My dad was making a living wage. But that very same person that's operating a crane today on Long Island, his living standards, his real wages adjusted for inflation are down about 30%.
Sure, it's terrible. But I'm going to pick up on one very quick thing. You know, it's all very well to say that you want equal opportunity, but when you have wealth inequality on the scale that we have today, when you have, you know, Elon Musk worth about $500 billion, you can't have equal opportunity when people have that much wealth and power. It's impossible.
I don't want it to be equal necessarily. I just want it to be fair. I want someone born in a poorer zip code to get health care and to get a platform of education and to get some training, to get some skills. You know, life is unfair. You know that.
But this is not a fairness thing. It's just Elon Musk has so much both economic and political power. There is no possibility of having a fair society.
The same thing I would say about my wealth. My wealth is not. I don't have $100 bills in a swimming pool. A swimming pool in my backyard sitting there. They're not there. I mean,
why not?
They're not, because they're in my business. They're in the checking account of the business, the payroll. It's got to pay the health insurance for my people. It's in the bricks and mortar of the business to work the business. It just isn't. I've got to put the money in my funds to ensure that my clients know that I'm eating my own cooking. And so Elon Musk's money, yes, he's a very rich man. God bless him.
And powerful.
Powerful, but it's in his rocketry. It's in the development of these factories. And, you know, listen, what he's done with Twitter, I'm surprised by. You know, he said that he was going to make Twitter flatter and fairer, and he accused the Twitter people that he bought Twitter from of being overly siding with the liberals. And he said this was a terrible thing that they did. And then he bought Twitter, and he did the exact opposite thing that they did. It was a little hypocritical on his part.
Well, he's sowed total cultural and political chaos with X, hasn't he? I mean, he is creating chaos.
He is. He said he wasn't going to do that. He is. And this is a sign that you're not good at everything. Joseph P. Kennedy, good at making money, good at bootlegging, not good at geopolitics. Elon Musk, good at rocketry, good at understanding how to put an electric vehicle together, not really good at understanding the contratemps of what's going on with his fellow men and women.
It all comes back to, though, the point of ego that and society, as a society, we just seem to value the wrong things in people, don't we? We look at Elon Musk and we see in him all these incredible things he's achieved and put him on a pedestal, whereas the reality is we should be thinking about what he's actually giving back to society, as you say. But the bigger point I want to make is, so you talk about people, looking when they go to the voting booth to, put their vote, they're thinking, right, Trump will help me, he'll give me a bit more wealth. Is no one going, hang on a minute, he's not going to, because inflation's going to ramp up if he brings in these trade tariffs. If he does mass deportation, that's massively going to hit the agricultural sector and hospitality and all of these things that are vital to inflation. Is no one explaining to people that their cost of living is massively going to ramp up and their money is going to be worth less? Is no one doing that?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to do that. Mark Cuban's out on the airways every day trying to do that, Steph. There's a whole group of people. There's economic policy officials. There's even objective standards. There are investment banks where there's Goldman Sachs and others that have said, hey, we've looked at the two plans. Her plan is better, less deficit spending. Her plan is better for wage growth, economic recovery. So there are people doing that, but there's a cloud in the society. There's a cloud that caused you to Brexit even though it was against your economic interests of Brexit. I got that wrong. Trump got it right. I looked at the data. I was on Trump's campaign. I said, there's no way they're going to Brexit. Look at all of the economic benefits of being associated with this. Trump said, oh, no, they're going to 100% Brexit. Okay, and so he got that right. He's got better political instincts than me. This is about emotion, Steph. This is not just about the data and the empirical evidence and the rationality. And that's what's going on. And hey, by the way, I'm mad at you. You've got more than me. And I'm very, very mad at the way the system works. I want to burn down the system. If I can't have it, I don't want anybody to have it. Please bring Trump in. The orange wrecking ball, let him set fire to the Capitol.
Yes, but I come from the area, Mooch, where people voted for Brexit, and I saw exactly why. And I was working at the BBC at the time, and I was saying to everyone, I think Brexit's going to happen because I can see how pissed off so many people are with the establishment, with Westminster. They thought that detaching from Europe would lead to them having more power themselves and more control over their own lives. So I've seen that. But surely, do we not learn from all of these things that that's not how it works? Like, do you not, is that the problem? Are people just silos in their thinking and not thinking?
But they're also anchored, right? You know, there's a professor from NYU, Jonathan Haig, talks about the righteous mind. I'm anchored to my positions. They're different from yours. No matter what rational intellectual arguments you're going to make to me, I am not neurally plastic enough to move my position. And oh, by the way, if I move my position, Steph, it is a sign of weakness. Okay, I moved my position. I was with Trump. I was a blue-collar kid. I lived the American dream. I traveled with Trump. I saw the ravages of bad policy decisions that Robert's referring to and the globalization, that combination. 71 campaign stops, Toledo, Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. I can name all the places that have been blighted by the bad policy decisions, lack of training, and the globalization. And I was sympathetic to these people. These are the people that I grew up with. I was in an aspirational blue-collar family as a kid. These people were economically desperational. I was with Trump. When he started going way off the mistake one, he was using racist and fascist-oriented rhetoric in 2016. I chose to ignore that. That is moral and ethical equivocation. I have to own that for the rest of my life. And then he kept moving the goalposts. If you listen to his rhetoric today in 24, it is exponentially worse than it was in 16. It was bad in 16, but we've moved 4 electron orbits out from the nucleus now, in terms of the malevolence of what it is.
And it's incredible how, as a society, we tolerate it.
Yeah, and so in 19, I said, I'm very sorry. He's moved the goalpost. It's now a bridge too far. I can't support his reelection. I will work against this man to get reelected. 5 years later, from 19 to 24, he is way worse. And he's calling for things. Again, you've got Glenn Youngkin is a smart man. He's a successful governor of Virginia. His tongue came out of his mouth twisted like a bow tie the other day as he was trying to defend Donald Trump's. Jake Tapper says, so Trump wants to bring the American military out to persecute and attack his political adversaries. What say you? Blah, 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 blah. Are you kidding me, bro? Is that what you're saying? Okay, are you really that big of a jackass at this point, this important inflection point in our history? I get it. We were all jackasses, many of us in 16, but it's now 24. Is that what you're going to say to the American people? Okay, and by the way, the people, when you hit them like that, they actually know. Like, I will be in coal mining areas of Pennsylvania this weekend where my dad grew up. And I'm going to sit with my fellow Italian Americans or my other friends in the Polish American community, Lithuanian American community, and I'm going to have the conversation with them because I grew up with them. I understand them, and I understand the grievance. But let's move off of the grievance to something practical that's going to solve your problems.
Can we go back actually to where we started, which is obviously you hope, but you also think that there's a reasonable probability that Kamala Harris wins. How will she govern? How do you think the legislative elections will go? Will she be able to control Congress?
Mm-hmm.
Will they control her? Talk us through, if she's able to make decisions, what her economic policies will look like.
Listen, I helped them on debate prep. I went into the spin room for her on the 10th of September to help her post-debate. I have spent time with her husband. I spent time with her economic people. I will say this about her. She's building a very broad tent. Okay, she doesn't know something. She'll turn to you, Robert, and say, okay, I don't know that. Can you help me with that?
That's a good thing.
Oh, that is a good thing. Donald Trump's not that. You're getting a team of one with Donald Trump. He wants to run the Fed. He's smarter than his generals. He's smarter than his virologists. He's a team of one. You know, there was an expression, it started with Harry Truman, and then there was a brass plaque on Ronald Reagan's desk in the Oval Office. You can get anywhere you want in life as long as you don't care who gets the credit. Trump is the opposite of that. I want all the credit. Everyone else go scram. I want all the credit. She's more closer to the Reagan-Truman idea. So I think she's going to be very practical and very moderate in terms of what she's doing. But, you know, she's probably going to have a mixed Congress. And by the way, this is a money podcast. Wall Street loves that because less activity is better for Wall Street. You know, that grind and that sclerosis is better for Wall Street. Now,
talk us through that.
Now, I'll talk you through that because she's going to try to pass things from a broad legislative agenda that are overly progressive. The right will block it. The nonsense about taxing unrealized gains, which would be absolutely destructive to a capitalist society. No wise person.
Does she really? Is she really pushing?
No, she doesn't. So that was in the platform. It lost in committee 5 years ago. It was never brought back up. But remember, they have to kowtow to the left. They do kowtow to each other. The reason why I hate political office is that you have to lie. You can't run for office without getting on a soapbox and starting the lies. Okay, yes, I'm with you. We're going to tax unrealized gains. Wink, wink. You know, I didn't really mean that, and we're not going to do that, right? And you know that goes on day and night. Okay, but her position is I'm with our allies. Her position is a Condoleezza Rice position, and she just wrote a beautiful piece in Foreign Affairs magazine about why the United States cannot be isolationist. And there's value for our economic development and our prosperity. And I will submit to you this, and you need to really think about this. We have a perilous situation in the world. We have 5.7 billion people on this planet. The majority of our fellow travelers are living under a form of totalitarianism or autocracy right now. And we know, because we've studied this, we're smart people, we know that autocracies lead to kleptocracy, they lead to corruption, and they lead to the little man or woman in a society getting destroyed. Our best bet is a flatter, more decentralized government that has less power so that the people can rise and innovation can take place. And she understands that. When you talk to her, she's for the integrity and the institutions of the system. Trump is like, how do I set up my kids for political office? How do I help my cronies? What am I going to do to favor my cronies? How am I going to shut down MSNBC that's shitting on me today? How am I going to do that? And let me tell you where I got in trouble with Trump. You mind if I share with you the story?
No, please do.
In April of 2019, I wrote an op-ed for The Hill. And I was still with Trump, still trying to support him. And it was an open letter to President Trump. Dear Mr. President, the press is not the enemy of the people. And then I went through some historical understanding of the press, it being the fourth estate to check the corruption in the government and to investigate people. But it had this ancillary economic effect. We teach our second graders in America that they can speak and think freely. A result of which they go on and create Facebook or Google or Apple Computer. In China and totalitarian structures, they're afraid of this type of intellectual freedom. If they say something bad about their leadership, they get put in a re-education camp. They then have to go steal our intellectual property and our identity. And in the United States, the freedom of the press is one of the anchors for our economic development. Well, he called me on Easter Sunday, 2019, and I erroneously thought he was calling me to wish me a happy Easter, Steph. He was not calling me to wish me a happy Easter. And a White House operator, hold for the president. Well, okay. Mr. President, Anthony, what the hell is wrong with you? I just read this op-ed. This is absolutely ridiculous. The press are the enemy of the people. Are you with me or not? Are you with me or not? Aren't you a MAGA guy? This does not sound like MAGA stuff. I don't like this at all. And I just want to give you the heads up on that. Okay, Mr. President, I respectfully disagree with you. I don't have time to hear your disagreement. Click. That was the last time I talked to President Trump.
Can I just ask you, though, on this, you're talking about, the fact that he's very much centered on what works for him and what doesn't work for him. But if you look at your career, when you talk about what's happened in your career, you started at Goldman Sachs when you were 25. You worked there for a while, but felt like you couldn't really be yourself. Then you came out of Goldman Sachs, and it took you say till 45 before you started taking your own risks and started being yourself. Is there not a sense that this kind of maybe oppression is too strong a word, but that it's businesses doing this to workers as well? And it's not just about governments controlling people, it's businesses controlling people too.
I think it's a valid argument, but I think I started at 25. I left at 32 to build my own business. I think the point I was trying to make about 45, by the time I had gotten to 45, I had some financial independence. So I started taking some risk in terms of expressing myself. My first television appearance was at the age of 45. I went on to be a financial pundit, and I signed a contract with CNBC, and then I took over Louis Rukeyser's show, Wall Street Week. I don't know if you guys would remember that show, but I was the host of that show when Trump got elected president of the United States. I had to give up that show to go work on his transition team. So I was named to his executive transition team. There were 16 of us. And we sat around trying to build his government. And we were way behind because no one was focused on the transition because nobody thought we were going to win. And so when we built the transition team, I had this guy, Reince Priebus, who was he's a classic American politician, like howdy doody to your face, nicey nice to your face. But then he would literally pick your eyeball out with an ice pick and drop it in his martini glass, right? And then he'd be talking to you while your eyeball's bleeding. All howdy-doody and nicey nice, This is the kind of bullshit that New Yorkers like me really can't stand, right? I used to hate this sort of nonsense. And so I made the mistake of accepting the offer from Trump 6 months after the administration started. So I was supposed to be his liaison. Trump wanted me to be his chief networking officer, help build bridges to the community. And Reince Priebus was dropping like opposition research dimes on me everywhere in Washington to try to prevent me from getting that job. And so finally I called Trump. I said, listen, Priebus doesn't want me in that job. He's an asshole. Call me. Trust me, you're going to want to get rid of Priebus. He's not your kind of guy. And Bannon is also an asshole. So when you're ready to get rid of those two guys, give me a call. And Trump called me. And this is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life, so you should pay attention closely. I let my ego and I let my pride affect my decision-making. Hold for the president. Can you get down here? Can you meet me in the Oval Office tomorrow? Yeah, of course. Absolutely, sir. I got there on the 20th of July, 2017. We're sitting in the study of the Oval Office. You were right about Priebus and Bannon. I want you to come in here and help me fix this. 11 days later, I got Bannon, Priebus, and Spicer fired. I think Spicer quit. My nickname for Spicer was Liar Spice. All the Spice Girls got a nickname. You got to come up with a nickname for him. So he was Liar Spice. But I got those guys fired, and I got blown out the door with them, and that was it. And I tried to stay loyal to Trump. I did not break from Trump for 2 years after my firing. I didn't want to be that aggrieved, bitter, oh, you got fired, now you turned on the president. Lifelong Republican. Let me see if I can support the president. But he kept moving the goalposts. I said, okay, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore.
So can I move just briefly, because we're probably almost out of time. Can I move briefly on to an area where we're definitely going to disagree?
Yeah, go ahead.
But I'm going to give you the opportunity to persuade me I'm wrong. I think...
Well, I already know you're wrong. I don't even know what the topic is, but go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So I take the view I think Steph disagrees with me on this, but I think cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, is the most pointless invention in the history of humanity.
Okay.
You're a big proponent of crypto. You invest big in crypto. Persuade me that I'm wrong on this.
I don't think in a few minutes I can persuade you, and I do understand that argument because you are in my demography. You're a contemporary of mine, and so I do understand the argument. But I would say two things to you that I would ask you to consider, and then perhaps you could invite me back. I would ask you to read The Ascent of Money by Professor Neil Ferguson.
Okay.
Which is a historic, or you could watch.
I know the book. I've not read it.
Or you could watch the BBC documentary. And if you understand the central tenets of what money is or how we store value in our society.
I think I do get that, but nonetheless.
Okay. So if you understand how we store value in society, then you know that your bank is actually a database.
Sure.
You know that your bank is a spreadsheet. My money's on one side. Your money's on the other side. Let's say you're the car dealer. I send my money to you. You ship me a car. So it's a spreadsheet. And if you understand it from that perspective, then you understand that this is a fully distributed, incredibly transparent, hardened, technologically hardened, unhackable accounting of value. And so if you understand it from that perspective and you were to look at gold, or you would take a checklist of things that the U.S., took a checklist of things that the people of the world consider in terms of a store of value, then if you looked at the metrics of Bitcoin and the different things, properties that Bitcoin have, you would get it. Now, Michael Saylor didn't get it. Anthony Scaramucci didn't get it. I think I tweeted out, Bitcoin is a ridiculous thing. Caveat emptor, it's financial blather, it's accounting nonsense. You said it more articulate than I did. But I then did the homework, okay? And I would implore you to do the homework. And this is where we live in our society. I have never met a person that has done the homework. I ran into Larry Fink, the largest asset manager in the world. We were in Abu Dhabi, El Arian Island, Four Seasons Hotel. He said, Bitcoin is a bunch of bullshit. What the hell are you doing in Bitcoin? And I said, Larry, you got to get up to speed. You have to do the homework on Bitcoin. Now, Larry's a lot smarter than me, and he's way more successful. He did the homework. Stan Druckenmiller did the homework. Paul Tudor Jones did the homework. I have yet to meet somebody, Robert, that does the homework and doesn't
I'll do the homework. You can come back and then we'll have a different conversation.
Right, I'm sorry, but I'm just letting you know. And by the way, Fink launched a Bitcoin ETF in the U.S., most successful one in history. And he said last week on his earnings call that Bitcoin is an asset class and it will be as large as the mortgage market in the U.S. That's a $13 trillion market capitalization. So don't go by me. There are very smart people that like it. You don't like it, I get it, but don't get missile locked. Don't be as stubborn as some of these people that are supporting Trump.
I keep an open mind on this stuff. I was
I want you to be rich, Robert. Okay, I don't want you to be doing podcasts your whole life. Okay, I want you to be out there driving around in a Maserati or a Ferrari or something.
I like doing podcasts.
All right, but I'm
happy to do that.
I want you to own a Lamborghini. Okay, I want you to buy Bitcoin.
Okay, well, we might do that, but there are other issues to do with how Bitcoin was originally sold as transformative for the way we manage the global economy, which has turned out, to use an expression that I've heard from you, I think to be BS. But I will look at these stories. I will look at.
I don't see it as that. I see it as a store.
No, I know you don't. You see it as a store of value. I will look at the store of value issue.
Long-term store of value.
I will look at the store of value issue.
And as someone with cryptocurrency myself, I am on the side of the mooch here on this. Okay, I think you are behind the times.
I've now figured out who my favorite guest is on this podcast. I didn't say who it was, Robert, but
it's all right. It's all right. Your view is the conventional view. Should we? I think we probably got to wrap up. I fear.
Yeah, I just love the way you explain things. Like I just could picture when you were talking about the tongue being a bow tie, twisted like a bow tie.
This poor guy. Oh my God, this poor guy. Hey, dude, get out of politics. Okay, don't lie like that. Okay, it's disgusting. You're hurting your family's legacy when you do that. You see, my thing is, I'm probably going to get persecuted by Trump. I'm on his enemies list, although I really feel I should be higher. I feel like I'm doing a lot of work. I should be higher on the list. But I have to send a message to people in my family that we're good people and we don't stand for this form of racism and misogyny and this anti-immigration. We just don't. Okay. And I would rather have that out there than any potential improvement in my pocketbook that he's supposedly going to provide.
I once interviewed Trump several years before he was president, and the misogyny I saw was when I walked into the room to interview him, and he came in. He did this whole speech about how he would have to leave the room to make himself look better because I was so beautiful and everyone would be staring at me and not listening to him. And honestly, as a girl from a part of this country where you hear some of the worst chat-up lines ever known to man when you're out in the local nightclubs, he honestly sounded like one of those tragic blokes in the nightclub who, was trying to chat me up to disarm me.
Off the air, I'm going to tell you one of my chat lines from the 80s. Okay, but I can't do it on the air because you guys would have to probably censor it anyway. But I'm going to tell you what I would have said about Robert if we met you in a bar, but we're going to do it off the air.
Can I ask you one very, very quick question, just in case you know the answer to this, because this has been bugging me ever since. So shortly after he became president, I went across with the then Prime Minister of Britain, Theresa May, and she met him at the White House, and there's this weird thing where they're walking together, and suddenly he grabs her hand, and it was I was there. It looked what? Do you have any idea what he was doing there? It was so odd, and nobody's ever been able to explain it to me.
I do, and by the way, you're going to be surprised by me. I'm sort of sympathetic to it. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're in overtime now. You won't include this in the podcast, but
we will include it.
One of the things that happened to me in the White House is I had finished my press conference. I went from lower press back up to the Oval Office. Trump was in the Oval Office. He sat down with me. And if you look up on the ceiling in the Oval, in plaster Paris, there's the presidential seal. And I looked at it and I said to him, Mr. President, when you're looking at that and you're sitting behind that desk, was it intimidating when you walked in here for the first time? You're now the president of the United States. And he said something very human, and he said something very honest. Right? We see him sometimes as a monster, but he is another one of our fellow human beings. He turned to me and said, I was incredibly intimidated. And he said, I sat here, I looked up at that seal that you're referencing. Oh my God, I'm the president of the United States. And then there was a phone call on the phone. I picked up the phone. It was the White House operations person in protocol. They said, Mr. President, Theresa May, the Prime Minister of the UK, is your first state encounter. And you're going to meet her at the North Portico, and you're going to greet her, and blah, 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 blah. And he literally said, and he used expletives, he hung up the phone, he says, oh my God, I have absolutely no idea how to do this. And that's exactly what he said. And so I am sympathetic to him because when he was with her, you could see him personally fumbling, and he lurched over to her hand, and he didn't do it intentionally. It wasn't a malevolent lurching thing as it probably was perceived here in the United Kingdom. It was, I'm a newbie on the job and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And
so like he wanted to hold his mum's hand.
Yeah,
was
a little
bit.
Like
that?
Like a little bit of an insecurity thing. And now you probably don't see it that way, but I'm telling you, that's how he explained it to me. And I can tell you the exact day. It happened on a Friday because I was only there for 2 Fridays, Robert. So I know it was a Friday. And it was Friday, the 21st of July, 2017. That's how he explained it to me.
Fascinating.
So hopefully that's helpful to you.
It is incredibly helpful, as has this whole conversation has been gripping. So thank you so much.
Great to be on with you guys.
And that's it for us. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.